Good evening, Professor Seaman and fellow leadership nursing students. My name is Jennifer Silgenbauer, and I'm here to present to you the ethical case of Miss Nancy Cruzan. The objectives for this presentation are as follows. To introduce you to the case of Miss Nancy Cruzan, the first case of right to die to be heard in the United States Supreme Court. To identify the long-term effects of CPR on a patient who has been without oxygen to the brain for a period of 12 to 14 minutes. Lastly, recognition of the ethical decisions to be made by the parents as well as the medical staff of Nancy Cruzan. On the PowerPoint that you all have received, you'll see a picture of Miss Cruzan, and I'm going to tell you the backstory. Miss Cruzan was a 25-year-old female who on January 11, 1983 was traveling home from working evening shift when, for some unknown reason, lost control of her vehicle, hit a pole, the car overturned numerous times, and Nancy was ejected from the vehicle. She was found face down in a ditch. The first person on the scene was a state trooper who arrived at 1 a.m. in the morning. Upon arriving and upon initial assessment, Miss Cruzan was found to have no pulse and was not breathing. However, it is important to note CPR was not initiated. At that time, after the initial assessment, the state trooper did look through her billfold, stated that he found pictures of children and was not sure if there was a possible child that had been ejected from the vehicle as well, so began to search the area for additional victims. 1:09 in the morning, paramedics arrive on the scene. Nancy is still face down in a ditch. She has no pulse and she is not breathing. CPR is initiated as well as an IV is started. At this time, there is still no breathing and still no pulse. 1:13 in the morning, paramedics shock Nancy's heart into beating and she does resume breathing. It is important to note that at this time, Nancy has now been without oxygen to the brain for a period of 12 to 14 minutes, which as healthcare providers we know indicates loss of brain tissue. Nancy was then transported from the accident scene to the hospital in a coma. Coma is determined by the Glasgow Coma Scale, as we all know. Scores can range from a 3, which is what Nancy was deemed to be in, to a 15, which is considered normal. After 3 weeks in a coma, Nancy did open her eyes. However, she was determined to be in a persistent vegetative state, from here on in identified as PVS. Despite this diagnosis, Nancy's husband, as well as her parents, did not lose hope. They continued with her therapies, they continued to work with her, and eventually Nancy was even moved into her husband's grandmother's home in the spring of 1983 with 24-hour nursing care. However, after a few months, Nancy is transferred back to the hospital and eventually a nursing home where she contracts an infection and her fever raises to 107 degrees, which we also know brain tissue can die at that temperature. In October of 1983, Nancy is transferred to the Missouri Rehabilitative Center. At this time, Nancy's parents do request to be replaced as Nancy's guardian in place of her husband. Permission is granted. The parents also request that the marriage be dissolved. The husband does not disagree, the marriage is dissolved. Nancy's parents are now her legal guardians. From October of 1983 to October of 1987, Nancy's parents continue to do research, they continue to meet with medical professionals, they continue to investigate different therapies for patients in persistent vegetative states. However, in October of 1987, they realized that Nancy's case is futile. They approach the courts and they request that all artificial means of hydration and nutrition be discontinued. The case is heard by Judge Teal, who does grant the request to withdraw the artificial nutrition and hydration. However, the Missouri Supreme Court appeals the ruling, and by a slim vote of 4-3, they declare that the artificial nutrition and hydration cannot be discontinued. The parents' last hope was sending the case to the United States Supreme Court, who, as stated, had never before heard a right to die case. After hearing the case, the United States Supreme Court did rule that Nancy did indeed have the right to refuse food and water. However, they also stated that the state of Missouri could require clear and convincing evidence that Nancy would not have wanted to live in this state and that she would have wanted to have these therapies and means discontinued. This sent the ruling from the United States Supreme Court back to the Jasper County Court, back to Judge Teal. This then led the family to have to come up with clear and convincing evidence regarding Nancy's wishes. Not only did Nancy state her wishes to her sister Chris, she also had a conversation with 3 co-workers in which she firmly stated she did not ever want to live in a vegetative state or as a vegetable. With this new information being brought to light, Judge Teal found that the evidence was clear and convincing. He then ruled that all artificial means of nutrition and hydration could be discontinued. This ruling was handed down on December 6, 1989. The parents were granted approval to remove all artificial nutrition and hydration. All of this was discontinued on December 14, 1990. Nancy Cruzan died 2 weeks later on December 26th at the age of 33, with her family by her bedside, feeling as if they had abided by her wishes. As you see here, this is the headstone of Miss Nancy Beth Cruzan. It states that she was born on July 20th, 1957. She departed this earth, per the parents, on January 11th, 1983, after the car accident. Her body was at peace on December 26th, 1990. The ethical principles applied in this case: autonomy. Autonomy is the right to self-determination, the right to make her own choices. Nancy did not have a living will or an advance directive, so she did not leave it in writing. However, her loved ones, her family, and her co-workers were left to fight for her wishes, to fight what she would have wanted for herself. Paternalism. This states that one individual assumes the right to make decisions for another. In this case, it was the parents that assumed the responsibility for Nancy, stating that they were aware of what she would have wanted, and they would not want her to have to live in the situation knowing it was not her wishes. Fidelity. Fidelity requires loyalty, fairness, advocacy, truthfulness, and dedication to the patient. These parents were dedicated to the patient, in this case, their daughter Nancy. They fought for her. They fought for her rights, stating she would not have wanted to live in this vegetative state with no quality of life. The nursing implications. We as nurses, we need to continue to educate all of our patients. Anytime they come into the hospital, the nursing home, the doctor's office, on advanced directives. Not only should we be advocating to our patients, we should be advocating to our family members as well. We need to continue communication with family members throughout the process when a patient is going through a court case such as this, or when the decisions have to be made by the family members. Not only are we the patient advocates, we are also the primary caregivers. We must treat our patients when they are not in a position to treat themselves or assist themselves in their own care. Not only are the patients our patient, their family members are also the ones that require our support. Another thing that I had written on some various postings that I have done is I truly believe that we need to continue to educate patients, not only on a once basis. We need to continue to do this on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Just because we advocate and just because we educate on one given day does not mean that information was heard on that given day. As nurses, it is our responsibility to continue that dialogue, to continue that education for our patients. And here I have listed some references. I look forward to the communication and your questions and your answers to my questions on the discussion board. Thank you and have a great night.